I design my coaching. My Fridays are freed up. I have very specific times, Monday through Thursday I work. I have a certain number of clients. We can only meet for so many times. And within that, I mentally have the space where I could do all the other things that I want to do. But it was very intentional. And with that, I also made a decision to limit the number of speaking engagements I can do in a year because I didn't want that to interfere with the coaching aspect. So I feel like that's my future.
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets, the podcast where we talk with successful career coaches on how they built their success and the hard lessons they learned along the way. My name is Davis Nguyen, and I'm the founder of Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, and even $100,000 weeks. Before Purple Circle, I've grown several 7- and 8-figure career coaching businesses myself, and have been a consultant at 2 career coaching businesses that are doing over $100 million each. Whether you're an established coach or building your practice for the first time, you'll discover the secrets to elevating your coaching business.
Welcome to Success Leaves Clues podcast. I'm Pedro, and today I'm joined by Tony Chatman, whose unique combination as both a scientist and chemical engineer, plus husband, father, and former nonprofit leader has shaped his understanding that the engine of thriving culture is the untapped potential within every organization's people. What sets Tony apart is his 20 plus years partnering with powerhouse organizations like Chase Bank, the U.S. Secret Service, Phillips 66, and St. Joseph's Health, where he's learned to bridge differences in perspectives and communication styles by addressing our universal need to feel valued and seen. Tony specializes in cultural transformation that goes beyond surface level team building, combining research-based insights into human behavior with transformative experiences delivered through humor, here we go, warmth, and genuine empathy. His keynote presentations create lasting change by helping organizations overcome stagnation and leverage the full power of their people, proving that when you unlock individual potentials, systematically, entire cultures shift from surviving to thriving. Welcome to the show, Tony.
Thanks, Pedro. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you, and I am a comic book nerd, Tony. Okay, I love the first edition, Back to the Origin Story. So let's rewind a bit, if you don't mind, because every coach has that moment where they look at their life and say, yeah, I guess this is what I'm doing now, right? So when was that for you, Tony?
So I'd actually like to even back up, if you would allow me, to becoming a speaker, which led me to becoming a coach. Okay. I have a very interesting background. I'm a chemical engineer. I was also a minister. So being a chemical engineer really helps me focus on patterns and systems. Being a minister helped me to become very people fluent and have a slant towards helping people. So there's a point in which I was trying to figure life out. And I pulled together some of my closest friends. I said, I got to figure out what I'm supposed to be doing. I know I'm not doing the right thing. I kind of wandered back into engineering. And so the first thing that my friend said is, if you can do anything in the world, what would it be? And it was even before the meeting started. And I had in my brain all this stuff about business development or whatever. But I just almost reflexively blurted out, gosh, if I could do anything, I'd figure out how to get paid to speak. 3 weeks later, I was in Bermuda opening for Les Brown. I mean, it was like just everything happened in this wild moment. And so from there, I went from being a speaker, then I added on training, which gave me a chance to have deeper dives. Then I took on consulting, which gave me greater problem solving. Then I became an advisor, and I realized 2 things. I was becoming better at solving problems and solving deeper problems, but more importantly, I always thought people were hiring me for my voice, and I realized they were hiring me for my brain and my relationship. And so once I put that together, that became the natural transition into what we're going into now, which is the coaching aspect of it.
Interesting. Well, very unique background indeed. I'm right there with you. Okay, we're talking about speaking gigs, minister, consulting, now coaching. A lot of stuff going on. Right now, I want to understand one thing. Right, because in the coaching space, especially in the early days, and I know you're coming from a background that you're more experienced and you had a vast background before coaching, right? But I'm curious about one thing, that shift that happens from I'm helping people, this is a calling, to I'm building a real coaching business around this. I'm not sure if it's the first coaching client, the first invoice towards coaching, but how did that play out for you?
Man, you know what? I think it was the first success story, right? It was one thing to kind of get the client and things are going well, but then to actually see results and, to have a client that was paying me on retainer. And then pretty quickly we go, okay, here's the actual ROI of what I'm paying you. That's what I felt legitimized me. And that's where I mentally made the shift into being a real coach.
The first success story. I love that. Okay, now Tony, after you got rolling, right, in your coaching business, or eventually you're still building towards that leap. You told me that, right? I want to
Yep.
understand, who do you serve? The ones you realize, okay, these are my tribe. These are the people I can really serve. Who are they, Tony?
Sure. So my tribe are executives and founders who are leading their organization through high stakes change, something that just cannot fail. And I realized, and there's a story behind it, but I realized this is the group that I can best serve because I can uniquely serve them, but also this is the group that sees me as their peer. And so they let me in a way that they won't let others in.
Okay. Now let's do an exercise here, if you don't mind. Okay. Let's
Let's go.
pretend I'm your ideal client profile. Okay. I'm your ICP, Tony. I'm one of those executives and founders going through change, and all that you mentioned. Now, first things first, how would I be able to find you in the first place? Let's talk about marketing now. Okay.
Sure. And that's actually the thing I'm working on the most now. It's funny we're having this conversation because unfortunately, the majority of my clients come referrals and things of that nature. So the majority of them find me either through referrals or I've been on a podcast or recently I've hired a PR firm. So they're finding articles about me. So they're seeing me on social media. But that's kind of the next iteration for me is building the real sales pipeline where it's more outreach.
Okay. Interesting. Now, let's pretend I listened to one of your podcasts or even was referred to work with you. Okay. I'm still your
Yep.
ICP. Let's fast forward the sales process. Let's say there's alignment there. Okay. And I understand you may have different offers, but we can run with the main one or however that looks like. But walk me through the point of view of a client being onboarded in your coaching business right now. Okay. That's me, and what are the potential outcomes I can expect out of it?
Sure. So from the point of view of the client, our first, working together is going to be what I call helping you get out of a stall. Okay. Most of my clients come in, they're going through some type of change and transition. So I take them through a program to say, okay, what are the change you're dealing with right now? Where's it stuck? Here's the 7 areas where it fails. And I take you through that, right? Within 3 weeks, you see traction in your organization, not just individually in your organization. You see greater engagement, you see greater buy-in, you see things moving. Okay. And that's quantifiable, right? After 6 weeks, then you have the option of coming into a community to say, okay, I want to be part of other my peers, other C-suite, other executives or other founders so that we can continue to grow in this process and understand I'm not doing it by myself, right? That's one of the bigger problems is we always think that our problems are unique to us. And then when we can have, kind of the hive mind work together and help us get through things, that also makes a world of difference.
Okay, I love the like-minded individuals trying to achieve the same goal somewhat to an extent, right? So here comes the community piece, which I really like it. Okay, now your work seems pretty hands-on, right, Tony? And here comes the first curveball, okay? Because I see a lot of coaches out there and they're advocating against burnout, for example, but sometimes they're burning out themselves, right? So
100%.
how do how do you think about capacity? So you don't stretch yourself too thin, because in the coaching space, sometimes you're wearing a lot of hats. You know what I mean?
capacity in my own personal capacity or capacity for my clients.
For yourself, how do you see yourself if you have I'll give you a personal example. Okay. I'm a coach myself. I am
Yep.
also a podcast host, but sometimes I struggle with my capacity, which is my time, right? We only have 24 hours in the day, but I also love my current situation. So it's like sometimes it's a trade off, and how to manage that. Do I need to hire someone, or do I need to be more intentional about my time? You know what I mean?
Yep. Totally got you. And I think that's the challenge when you're multi-talented, right? Because the reality is, I think you and I are similar in there. There's so many things that we can do well. So for me, I have this acronym LITE, leave it to the experts. So there's one or two things I'm going to do. Everything else, I'm going to put the team systems and people around me that they can do the other things. So for example, I have a consulting aspect of my business, right? My wife left her current job. She's now my COO. She fully runs that. I don't touch it. Okay. That frees me up. Then with the training aspect, we put that under the umbrella of consulting. So for training, I come in, I deal with the high-end clients. I work with the C-suite, the top level, the board, and then my trainers, they all do the other work. So then when I come into the coaching space, I design my coaching around my lifestyle because I'm kind of at the point where I'm not going to, I didn't get into coaching to have a job. You know what I
Mm.
mean? And I think that's what happens is sometimes we become slaves to the business instead of having business serve us. So I design my coaching. My Fridays are freed up. I have very specific times, Monday through Thursday, I work. I have a certain number of clients. We can only meet for so many times. And within that, I mentally have the space where I could do all the other things that I want to do. But it was very intentional. And with that, I also made a decision to limit the number of speaking engagements I can do in a year because I didn't want that to interfere with the coaching aspect. So I feel like that's my future.
Okay. Very interesting. Now, I feel the need to ask you one thing. Based on your background alone, you mentioned consulting. I worked at a consulting firm in Brazil, Ernest and Young, UI. So I'm a former consultant myself. You mentioned the chemical background and a minister. So you're in very different landscapes. Let's put it like that, right? So and now you're talking about coaching, dude. I'm curious about what motivated that, because consultants, they have all the answers and coaches have all the questions. So my question to you is, man, what
Hey,
made
stop.
you
Back up. That was awesome. Say that again. I like that. Say that one more
uh,
time. No, really good.
okay, consultants have all the the answers and coaches have all the questions. Sorry about that. So
That
here's
was
the
good. I
thing,
love
right?
that.
Sometimes I see consultants, they're facing the big boss, which is people, right? They're trying to implement frameworks, they're trying to implement systems, and it's not happening. So what made you pivot towards coaching? What made you try to solve that point of the equation? You know what I mean?
You know what it was? It was the feedback from my customers. Like it was literally what they were asking me, and I was fighting it. Because I tried coaching early on in my career, and I got ghosted. I didn't set it up right. All the rookie mistakes, right? And so I was like, I'm not doing this again. I can get paid a lot of money to speak. I'm just going to focus on that. And more, my customers, my point of contacts were saying, I need help. I need more time with you. I need something very specific from you. Now, you brought in chemical engineer, you brought in minister. Those two things are both giving me a very specific advantage. Okay. As a chemical engineer, I see patterns that most people don't, and I see them very quickly. Okay. But having been a minister, I'm used to dealing with human beings who are often at their worst moment. And I'm used to being able to give them perspective, help them see themselves and their situations in a way that they have never seen it before, and to give them hope and motivation to move forward. So to be able to see patterns and then to communicate with people, gives me a very unique space. And I learned early on as an engineer to be an engineer without talking like an engineer. So I don't use engineer speak, right? I know how to talk to people where they are, wherever they are. And so for me, it made sense because my clients were telling me, here's the best way that you can serve me. And at one point, it became, I'd be a fool to not listen.
Mm. I can see it. The hybrid approach. I really like that. It gives you different perspective on how to navigate the challenges, right? Having
Yep.
that framework mentality from the chemical engineer background plus the minister, which is the human touch. So really like that. Now, I'm curious, man. We're talking about your business and I want to talk about future. So, where are you taking all this, looking ahead? Where do you see the business going? Are you thinking about scaling, hiring? Is there a next step you're excited about?
100%. So, number one, scaling the coaching, right? We're still right now in the early stages of the coaching side. And so, going all in, getting it really robust, getting coaches underneath me. That's number one. Number two, as you know, I live in Panama, right? I'm newly living in Panama. I'm really working hard to break into the Latin American market. I think that is an underserved market that has been, neglected. It's not neglected, but I think there's a lot of potential there, especially as, for example, the tech space is really exploding here. And so that's been a major focus of mine, and I've been getting really good traction. The third thing is I'm starting to work on getting on boards of directors. I actually have a couple of conversations coming up in the next few weeks. My goal is by the end of the year to be on one or two boards, not like Fortune 500 level, maybe Fortune 4 or 500 level, but not one to two, three, or privately owned, more of an advisory board. I'm going to work my way up to more of a governance board. But those are the three areas I'm going towards.
Nice. I'm excited just by hearing the three angles you're tackling. Okay. Now, you know, you kind of browse it through it already, like the marketing piece and all of that. But whenever we're aiming towards the next chapter, right? There's always something we're refining in the present, Tony. So what are you currently trying to improve or tighten up in your business right now?
Sure. So first of all, it is the branding. Right, we've made a hard transition into I am a resistance speaker and coach. I help people and organizations overcome resistance. So really solidifying the branding aspect of that, right? We're probably 90%. We should be launching a new website in the next week and a half, video, all that stuff should be good. That's the first thing. The second thing, honestly, is butts and seats. That's the whole thing for coaches, right? A lot of times we know what we want to do, what we can do, but we got to get people in there. So at this point, it really is going to become the marketing from a social media and PR standpoint, but also just the outreach and really getting into different circles because of the way I'm trying to expand, my previous points of contact are not necessarily my current ideal client. And so that's a shift I'm making. And so I'm really going hard into marketing and sales and really trying to learn from everyone who's already done it instead of figuring it out myself.
Mm, okay, love that. Especially when we're talking about marketing and sales. And I want to tap into your experience for a second because it's not just about coaching, right? You have a vast
Right.
background. We already established that. And I think people listening could really benefit from this. I mean, you've been in the game long enough to hear all kinds of business advice, so much noise out there. And some business advice are good, and so some are bad. Let's put it like that. So, what would you say is one piece of business advice you hear all the time, Tony, that you think is overrated or maybe misunderstood?
One piece of business advice. Oh, this is going to be very different. Okay. And I'm going to tell a quick story. So I actually had a coach approach me at the end of the year. It was, the old, hey, anyway, it was like I was kind of backdoored into a conversation about coaching. And actually, her product seemed really good. But every time we talked, she'd ask me a question and I'd start to answer it. She'd go, okay, I got it. Okay, so next. And she kept doing that during the conversation. And as we kept going, I thought, you know what? There's no way I can hire this person because even if what she tells me is correct, I don't trust her enough that I would follow it anymore. And so my mentor gave me a piece of advice years ago, and it's always stuck with me. He said, don't try to be efficient with people. Because a lot of times in our conversations with people, we try to be efficient. Let me get through this thing really quickly. You can feel that. And the minute you do it, you lose connection. And we are in a business that is based on respect and trust. Those are things that are both earned and reciprocated. So if in our conversation, I feel you don't respect me, I don't know anyone who respects people who don't respect them. I don't know anyone who doesn't trust people or who trusts people who don't trust them. And so not being, and that's, it's a different phrasing of it, but not being efficient with people. Give them the time to talk, let them finish their story, let them feel connected, be a good person to them. Don't let that aspect be a hindrance to you being able to help them.
Really powerful reminder, man. Don't try to be efficient with people. I'll keep that in mind. I love the quote from the mentor. Okay. Now, on the other side, Tony, what's a piece of advice you wish more people actually took seriously? You know?
What do I wish they took seriously? Um,
Yeah.
you know what? You always hear, there's two things you always hear. You always hear, be yourself, right? I think that that's more and more true because as the market's becoming flooded and with AI, everyone's starting to sound the same. When you
Hmm.
sound the same, you're a commodity. And when you're a commodity, then the only differentiation between you and the next person is price. And I don't
Hmm.
want to be in a price war with anyone. So you really can't chase the trends. You've got to be yourself. And then the second for me, it really is about relationships. I believe the number one way to level up your business is to level up your relationships. And I've seen this happen over and over and over in my business. I got into six figures by being around six figure people. I got to the quarter million space by being around quarter million people. Got into the half million space a year by being around people in that space and higher because they bring you up to that space with them if you allow them. So leveling up your relationships is really important.
I love the reminder. I love actually the be yourself reminder, you know. It turns out to be authentic at the end of the day pays off, I think, you know. Sometimes I'm browsing through social media and I'm looking at AI slop, right? We can always tell which is AI, which is not. I'm not sure if they're aware
Yep.
of that, but nobody talks like the way AI talks. I'm not sure. Like my brother, he owns a startup in Brazil for AI, right? And we kind of joke sometimes, like imagine a car dealership, okay? And you're getting inside there, and it's let's say it's Toyota, right? And a salesperson opens up with, "This is not a Porsche. This is not a Volkswagen. It's just a Toyota." Nobody talks like that, man. No, I so
Right.
I think right? It's so easy to detect, and I'm not sure if people are just posting content just for the sake of it, so they want to be consistent because they heard somewhere that they need to be consistent and post every day, you know, or they don't get it that it's actually not. That's easily detectable that it's not authentic. Do you know what I mean?
100%. You know what? You can smell it. And once you smell it, you don't want to work with it. Right? It's like, oh, you're not another one of them. I
Mm,
think that's even happening right now on social media, right? People, there's a really big thing on social media right now with some of these credentials weren't real. It is being found out, and everyone's abandoning that person. And if they just in the beginning go, "Hey, look, I'm good at what I do. Here's who I really am," they would have been fine. But now they're trying to write it out. I think that happens with all of us, especially when you're new, because when you're new, you're trying to find your voice, right? Miles Davis once said, "It took me years to learn how to sound like myself." Right? Because at the beginning, he was trying to sound like all the other jazz greats. And so when you find who you really are and find your voice, then the goal is not to find your people. The goal is to have your people find you. And that's how I'm looking at it. Because if I'm authentically me and I'm out there, my people will find me instead of me chasing my people.
You know, there's something I'm not sure if you agree with me because you're gonna get me to a rabbit hole here. Okay, Tony, I blame you 100%. And here's the kicker, right? When we're talking about teenagers, they have this, let's call it tribalism idea of trying to insert themselves into a group, right? They try to
Yep.
get that group identity so they're stronger, right? Because they're still trying to find their own voice. Let's put it like that, right?
Yep.
And I see a lot of that happening from people that are pivoting from corporate world to coaching, because in the corporate world, and I worked at banking, I worked at consulting firm. I mentioned that we try to kind of go within their box too, right? Their whole identity of what corporate think is right. So, do you feel like the coaching space sometimes it's a little bit different to really try to find your own voice and be authentic, or how do you see that?
Sometimes. Dude, it's like constantly. The same thing is happening in the speaking world too. From here, the influx of people becoming coaches and becoming speakers, and they're trying to accelerate what they're doing. And so it's a lot of fluff behind them. They seem like they're bigger than they are. And then they start, and then what I'm realizing is you have to remember everything on social media is fake, right? And I'm saying that that's a little bit of a, extrapolation, not everything, but most things. And yet we're taking it in. We feel like, okay, I got to compete with this person and with this person, and they're doing this, and they're getting traction doing this. We don't know if they're really getting traction, if there was a bot farm or whatever, right? But we feel this thing. And so then the frustration is saying, okay, this is all great. I'm trying to build something that is uniquely me. I'm not competing with them. I'm not even, I mean, I'm in the same space with them by name, but we're not always doing the same thing. But there's a constant pull to internally compare myself to them or want to, adjust because this is hot. And what I realize is, you know what? Sometimes that slow burn will just last longer. It takes a little longer to get there, but it also takes a lot more to take you out. Whereas there's a lot of people I'm watching them in coaching and in speaking. They're bubbling up and they appear to be hot, and then one thing happens and they're done, right?
Mm,
And I think it comes from not being who they are. I would rather fail at being myself than fail at trying to be someone else.
mm. You
Now,
know,
I'd rather
man,
not fail. Let me put that in there too, but you
of
know,
course. But to an
right.
extent, right? To an extent, I feel like we're comparing sometimes. You mentioned social media, right? Where sometimes I see people comparing their internal self to others' people external self, and that is cherry picked. That's the thing. They selected what they want to advocate out there. So there's that. There's a lot of fake out there. There's a lot of exaggeration. I'll put it like that too. Now, I love the intake about the social media. We can hate on them all day, okay? And I love it. Now, if someone listening wants to connect with you or follow your work, Tony, and we're gonna have all the links in the description, okay? Where can people find
Yep.
you and connect with you? Best way to do it.
First place is LinkedIn. I'm super active on LinkedIn. That is my number one thing. I am rebuilding my YouTube and my Substack, but go to LinkedIn first, and that's where we rock.
Okay. Now, there were a few things you shared today that really stayed with me, Tony. Okay, I put it like that. When I asked you about the shift, right? What made you realize you turned into a coach? And I love the way you framed it. Actually, that was the first time I heard something like that. It's my first success story. It was not the first paying client, was not the first invoice, not the LLC, whatever that looks like. It was just the feedback, right? And also, you mentioned feedback from customers too, right? How important that is for you. So I commend you in doing that. Not to mention, Tony, the background, which is pretty wild. Let's put it like that. And awesome, right? Cool in a way, and awesome too. Like chemical engineer, man, minister, then speaking, speakers, speaking gigs, and then you come into coaching, consult. Oh my God, you got it all, man. A lot of plates spinning. I really like it. I would say also too, that you mentioned that you tried coaching early in your career. That is, and you felt like didn't land. I love the vulnerability, how open you were about that and moving forward. And now you think you're ready and just hitting the gas, not trying to, because I felt personally, I had some bad spots, some stuff that didn't happen. It took me a while to go back to there, which is all here, right? All in the mindset. So kudos to you on that, man. And last but not least, don't try to be efficient with people. Your mentor, that quote. I think at the end of the day, and I worked in sales with another coach too, and at the end of the day, what brings me back to sales and when everything clicked for me was when I stopped pushing my agenda. Stop thinking about closing people, thinking about the next sentence I'm gonna ask or question or whatever I'm gonna say, and just focusing on them. That's when I really felt the difference. But Tony, this is my long-winded way of saying that I appreciate what you do, and I appreciate you being here and sharing so openly today, man. It was great having you on.
Well, thanks so much for having me. This has been a great conversation. I'm looking forward to staying connected and see what else the future holds for us.
That's it for this episode of Career Coaching Secrets. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this episode to catch future episodes. This podcast was brought to you by Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, or even $100,000 weeks, all without burning out and making sure that you're making the impact and having the life that you want. To learn more about our community and how we can help you, visit joinpurplecircle.com.